Clyde W. Ford is here, his latest book of Blood and Sweat. We didn't really get into it, and I brought you on because it was like Black Lives in the Making of White Power and Wealth. Howard French has a book, Born in Blackness, which talks about the foundational making of, these empires, right?
Yes.
Yes. Ed Baptist has, his book that I was recommending every single day on the show, Ed P. Baptist. And, it goes into the economy of this country from a very agnostic position, taking the Black bodies, different body parts, and kind of showing how America built its wealth using Black hands, using Black mind, and all of this is brilliant, right? You are writing about what in this?
Well, what I tried to do is to go back as far as I could to pre-colonial times to show how it was really the technology, the economics, the industry, the labor, the laws, that all of these institutions were really based on the work and often to control the labor of Black lives, whether it was in Africa, whether it was in North America. So, I used some of the research that Ed Baptist did. I think he did some great stuff. But what I wanted to do was to tell this story, not at a high level, but from the level of the individual lives, the individual people who actually lived through these historical epics. So I start the book, for example, Karen, with two individuals we know were on the first ship that landed off of the James River, at the mouth of the James River in Virginia, Anthony and Isabella. Now, they were Angolan, and I talk about their lives. What we know.
Tell us a little bit about, and The Half Has Never Been Told is the Ed Baptist book. And I think, every time somebody not from the culture and, who are slightly ignorant, I send them there because Ed Baptist, is a white identified man, right? Who did a very kind of clinical, historic, drum beat of like how this all happened. And it's stunning. In that book, we're introduced to Patsy, who we see in 12 Years a Slave, that Lupita Nyong'o played that role in that movie and won an Oscar for it. But we get to see how this little slight woman was able to pick 500 pounds of cotton a day because of torture, right? Torture did something that that evolution couldn't do. It separated our hemispheres of our brain to be able to pick with both hands and shut off our minds from the pain, and 500 pounds a day. And she was the standard.
Right.
Tell us about Anthony and Isabella.
Anthony and Isabella came from the Ndongo people of Angola. They were herded, and probably the result of wars that the Portuguese instituted by being on one side of the Congo Kingdom or on the other side of the Ndongo. And so, all right,
pause for a second. I'm sorry, Clyde. I need you to slow down, because when you say Clyde Ford is here, his book of Blood and Sweat, we're getting into right now. He's talking about Anthony and Isabella. So you're telling me the Portuguese who found out that there was gold in Africa because of Mansa Musa's trek, that's what we learned from Howard French, across from Mali to Egypt, that he upset the whole entire gold industry. They were like, wait a minute, why are we going around the continent? Let's go in it. So they were the first in Africa. They went to this region and created dissension among the people.
Oh, it was worse than that. Yes, they created dissension. And there were two kingdoms. There was the kingdom of the Congo and the kingdom of Ndongo, who was a little weaker than the kingdom of Congo. So the Portuguese would switch sides back and forth, and they'd get these kingdoms to war against each other. And then in the late 1500s, they had this insight, wait a minute, why are we even doing that? So they got another group of African mercenaries called the Imangala, and they brought them in and they said, look, you go in and you can be on the side we tell you to be on, and we will give you, check this out, tobacco for as many slaves as you can bring us. And so it was the Imangala who actually were the people who raided, and they were very vicious mercenaries, and brought these Africans back that the Portuguese herded onto ships, mostly bound for South America and Central America, except the St. John the Baptist was intercepted by a European pirate ship. And because of that, the captain of the St. John the Baptist took 20, 25 Africans and said, you know what? I'm not going to sell them to the Spanish and Portuguese colonies, because I heard there's a colony in Virginia that's just starting. I'm going to sell them there. And so in 1619, he brought this ship. Anthony and Isabella were among those individuals on that ship to Point Comfort, which is close to Jamestown in Virginia. And basically, he didn't even sell them. He bartered them for food and water and the other supplies, salted pork and all that other stuff that his ship needed. That's how the first 22 Africans got to this country in August of 1619.
No, I mean, but you think about bringing in mercenaries and trading human lives for pork and water, and but you're on a ship called the John the Baptist, which I'm sure somebody prayed over, because that was the thing, when I went to Ghana, which was most stunning. You're in, this Elmina Castle, I'm calling it death camp, and above where the women, where they would pack 300, 400, 500 women, stuff them into this holding space for 3 months while they load up the ship. They prayed every day.
Yeah,
I find that not just fascinating, it's just as interesting as people celebrating Easter and on Sunday, and then are like horrible on Monday through Saturday, but they prayed, the priest prayed every day. And then they had a special house for some of the women that they would rape and have babies with. They got to stay in Ghana, but in a special house just over there, past the castle, past the death camp, where they would cook for the people, cook for the enslavers. And I was like, but they would pray every day, Clyde. To who? Who are they praying to?
Yeah. I was in Elmina too. I was in Elmina years and years ago, long before there was even tours there. There was just one old man with an oil lamp, and it was a candle lamp, who'd take you down to the slave quarters. And so it's incredible. It's an experience that a lot of people need to have, simply because it rivets you, as I can hear in your voice, Karen. It rivets you in an understanding of the inhumanity and the brutality of what took place there, where people could pray while there was this horrible suffering going beneath them. And, that's where it started. It started even before Elmina in Angola and Congo. And that's why I wanted to start there. Elmina was 1452. By that time, there was already a Portuguese presence a little further south in Angola and Congo, and Catholicism was in there. But look, it's not just Christianity. In Europe, and this is what I say in the book, you take instances like in Portugal and Spain, where there was an inquisition against Jews. And so the Jews moved from there to Amsterdam in the Netherlands. But it was Jewish merchants who held the asientos, which were the contracts to deliver enslaved people, for the Portuguese and the Spanish colonies. And it wasn't just Christians and Jews. It was Muslim traders, for example, who had the trans-Saharan slave trade and a portion of the African slave trade, particularly in Senegal, and where there is reports of perhaps 90% of the people they captured not making the journey trans-Sahara and dying. So, what I say,
we don't even talk about that. We talk about the middle passage millions that ended up in the ocean. Yeah. But we don't talk about the millions and millions and millions that from the interior to the coast who didn't make it. We don't talk about all of that carnage.
And we should, not because we want to keep on, this woe is me thing. That's not the point. The point is to understand the history. So when we start to talk about reparations, and when we hear all this crazy stuff about critical race theory, you have a historical basis to say, that's not what's going on. Let me tell you how this started, where it went, and why in today's day, we feel there is justification for reparations. There is justification to say this stuff about critical race theory is just crazy. These governors don't know what they're talking about. And here's why. I want to arm people with the information they need in order to really not just take the company line that we get in school about our history, but to really have a sense of what that history is all about.